Well, greetings from Cooperstown, New York, site of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. It's a beautiful spring day here in Cooperstown and a very special program of virtual voices of the game with two former members, standout first baseman for the Los Angeles Dodgers, James Loney and Wes Parker. And today we'll be talking primarily about the legacy of Jackie Robinson, who, of course, also played for the Dodgers and actually did start his career as a first baseman. We're very glad all of you could join us. If you have questions for either James or Wes or both, we have a chat room where you can go in and post your questions or comments for either of these gentlemen. But we're very much looking forward to the conversation. Brief introductions for each of our guests. James Loney played for the Dodgers from 2006 to 2012. For his career, batted .284 with 108 home runs. Wes Parker played for the Dodgers 1964 to 1972, won 6 Gold Glove Awards, one of the great defensive first basemen of all time, and also twice received votes in the National League MVP balloting. It's my great pleasure to welcome both James Loney and Wes Parker to the Hall of Fame's program. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us today. We really appreciate it. Greetings.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. I appreciate you for putting this on. I think it's going to be really fun.
A lot of the focus that we'll have will be on Jackie Robinson. And although he was best known as a second baseman, that's where he played most of his career, he did play as a first baseman exclusively during his rookie season, 1947 with Brooklyn. And for his career, he did play 198 games at the position. And it was 76 years ago that he made his debut for the Dodgers, breaking the long-standing color barrier that had existed in the National League and the American League. Wes, if I could, I'd like to begin with you. It was June 4th, 1972, that the Dodgers officially retired Jackie's number 42. They also retired Roy Campanella's number and Sandy Koufax's number that day. But you were there. You were at Dodger Stadium that day in 72. What do you remember of that?
Oh, I remember how excited I was to meet Jackie. That's the main thing. He was my favorite player when he was with the Brooklyn Dodgers. I liked him because of his energy, just sheer energy. He was electric on the field. One of those people you just couldn't take your eyes off him. And I had a chance to ask him if he was safe on that World Series call at home plate, where he was ruled safe, and Yogi Berra jumped up and down insisting he was out. And Jackie said, yeah, I was safe. And then later on, I asked Yogi Berra if he was safe or out, and Yogi said, no, I got him, he was out. But when I've seen film of it, it looked like he got his foot in just underneath the tag, just barely, with very, very close play. So I can understand why they both had different opinions about it. But I found Jackie to be bigger than I thought he would be, for one thing, physically, just a big, strong man. Mm-hmm. But I always liked that energy, and he still had some of it when I met him that day.
So that was the very first time you talked to him?
Very first time, and like I said, him being my favorite player, I got as big a thrill as I did out of meeting Nat King Cole, who was my favorite singer. And very closely connected with the Dodgers. I met him in our clubhouse. And Jackie was just very nice. I'm not sure he knew much about me. Didn't matter. I didn't care. I was starstruck. I admit it. I had a man crush on him. And, I just loved the way he played. I wish I could have played with his energy. And, you know, it's really hard to steal home plate. This is aside from all the other wonderful things that he did on the field. To steal home plate as many times as he did, I don't know the exact number, but it's hard. And I can remember the things that Duke Snider told me about him, and Carl Erskine and some of the other great Brooklyn Dodger greats said that the thing that most amazed them about Jackie was that in one step, he would be going full speed. One step, and he was going full speed, which is why he was able to steal so many bases.
Wow. Were you nervous meeting him? You've met a lot of celebrities, especially playing near Hollywood, but were you really nervous meeting your hero, Jackie Robinson?
To a certain extent, yeah, not wildly so, but to a certain extent. And I just had such respect for him. And then I was fortunate later on, I was doing the radio pre and post game show for the Dodgers. And as my guest, I had Rachel Robinson, his widow. Rachel, without question, is one of the finest women I've ever met in my life. She had class, she had intelligence, she had wisdom, she had great manners. And I think that Branch Rickey was just as impressed with meeting Rachel Robinson as he was meeting Jackie Robinson. And I think that was part of the reason why he was selected as the one that the Dodgers were going to bring up first as a black ball player. And Duke Snyder told me that Jackie was not the best black ball player at that time. There were others who were better, but that his comportment and the fact that he was married to such a wonderful woman is what kind of threw everything on his side as to why they brought him up first, because they knew with that kind of a woman standing behind him, he could handle all of the heartbreak that he was going to go through being a black man in a white world.
Rachel still with us, 100 years of age.
God bless her.
Amazing story. We'll talk more about Rachel as the program proceeds. I do want to mention the picture on the right side of your screen is the jersey that the Dodgers retired. It was not actually a game used jersey, but it was the jersey the Dodgers used as kind of the ceremonial prop, and they officially retired that uniform and the number 42 during that ceremony in June of '72. We're lucky enough to have it here at the Hall of Fame. It's actually on display in the museum in our Black Baseball Experience exhibit, Chronicle of Black Baseball, located on the second floor. James, we'd like to bring you in. You, of course, represent a younger generation. You, of course, would not have been around to have met Jackie, but the legacy is still an important one. I'm curious, being someone from a younger generation, and I guess this ties in with the whole notion of whether Jackie was being taught in school. I went to school in the 70s and 80s, and unbelievably, we were never taught about Jackie Robinson in school. Now, I knew about him as a baseball fan, but we were never taught about him as part of American history. I'm curious, James, when did you first hear about Jackie? Was it in school? Was it as a youth? Or did it come later on?
Yeah, as I recall, I don't believe, learning about it in school as well. I always felt it was through the baseball circle or on TV. That's kind of how I really got to know the story. I remember actually, I think I did a book report. So maybe in school in a way, but on my own, right?
Yeah.
So like really, getting the details and learning the history then. But I feel like even then, because you're younger, it doesn't really hit you. He doesn't really have the impact when you're younger. You're just like, oh, okay, that's cool. He was the first, African-American to play. But then once you learn of all the, things that he went through and, just the scrutiny even on his own team, right? I feel like that's when you learn to appreciate it even more. And then we're talking about that play at home plate. I feel like that play at home plate really is bigger than just the play, because it almost shows it's like he's stealing home, right? It's like the hardest thing to do in baseball as far as, a steal. And he's showing how hard it is to be an African-American in baseball. So it's almost like, you know what, all these other things going on, I'm going to show you I can do this and I'll be safe just by a hair, right? And I feel like that just shows people it's like, no, I got this. So that play is shown over and over and over. So I just feel like it's bigger than just safe or out. It's just like, look, I'm showing you I can do this on the baseball field at any time. Because it's not like he just stole home one time. But I feel like with Yogi Berra catching and the Yankees, like it's just, it's just so much bigger than that play right there.
That's an interesting perspective. I'm curious, as a young student, you kind of embarked on this Jackie Robinson project on your own, and you put this research paper together. Being young at the time, was it shocking to you that there was actually this unwritten rule preventing Black players from playing? Was it shocking to you that a player actually had to break through the color barrier? What was your perspective as a young student?
Yeah, no, I think it was because, when you're young, you're trying to figure out, you hear these questions. I have kids now. They're like, well, why? Right. And then that's the answer you're trying to, have in your head. And I don't think it's really answered when you're younger. I think as you get older, you realize there's some things that just, didn't maybe quite make sense. Right. Or you understand the history behind it later. And then you're like, oh, okay. Was it really, for me, like racism, is it always just because it's the color of the skin, or is it because of, what they could get out of it, right? Like when you think of slavery, like, if they could enslave whoever and bring them down to profit for them, would they do that, right? So, it just happened to be in that situation. It's like, okay, we'll just, grab these people and, put them in these situations and make it profit for us, right? So sometimes I feel like they were just taking advantage when they could. But yeah, you don't understand that when you're younger. That's not, for me, it's like something you learn as you get older, and you're like, all right, we don't live in a perfect world. So I think that's how I kind of summed it up.
And it really was against these teams' self-interest. These guys had to know, the owners and front office people had to know that Black players could play on the same stage. Maybe they would have said something different publicly, but they had to know guys like Jackie Robinson could improve their team, could make them better. That's ultimately what motivated Branch Rickey. And
right.
for so long, they were really, because of racism, they were willing to go against their self-interest, lessen the team.
Yeah. I mean, as much as, you feel like the owners will want to win, right? Or, that's the thought as a player, but, it's not always going to be like that, right? It could be the optics of what it's going to look like and the backlash, and, are the fans going to still come to the game? So it definitely took a lot, for Branch Rickey, to get on board, I think, and realize, what? No, this is going to, Jackie Robinson changed the world, right? He didn't just change baseball. I feel like, in any sport that you think of, even if you're not a baseball fan, Jackie Robinson, right? I can't think of another sport where that player's name based on the color of their skin, right?
Yeah.
And obviously he was a great player, but he just goes down in history, with any kind of person out there, whether like you don't even have to know sports. So I think that just shows you the impact he had throughout the world.
Now, the Dodgers drafted you, James, and you eventually make your major league debut with them. After joining the organization, maybe it was in the minor leagues, did the organization make a point of talking to the players about Jackie and his legacy? Was that part of the Dodger way, the Dodger lesson?
Yeah, there was definitely, I think there were definitely times, especially in Vero Beach, like, you have like these little classes every once in a while, these little meetings to learn about the history. So, yeah, it was definitely an integral part of that right there, just because, like you said, Jackie Robinson is like when you think Dodgers, that's what you think, right? So that was definitely taught, along with like other history. You talk about the Brooklyn days, and I always, applaud the Dodgers for teaching us the history, because I'm from Texas. I didn't know too much about the history of the Dodgers, and then when I got over here, it's like, oh, okay, you learn about Vin Scully and Tommy Lasorda and all the great Dodgers that played back in the day. So, I appreciate that they did that for us.
Yeah. Wes, you had an interesting experience because you lived through segregation. You remember those years, but then you joined the Dodgers in the early 60s. And by then, they're one of the most progressive organizations. They drafted and signed a lot of Black players. Other organizations did too, the Cardinals and the Pirates and the Giants. But you really kind of saw both sides. You saw that segregated life in baseball, and then you saw an example of a team bucking that trend.
I did, but it didn't impact me the way it did James and some of the other players on the team, because I was so intent on succeeding as a Dodger and making my mark with the team, becoming a starter, and just staying in the big leagues that I wasn't too concerned about it. Also, on our Dodger team with Johnny Roseboro, Tommy Davis, Willie Davis, Maury Wills, Jim Gilliam. They're such great guys and such wonderful ball players that I never saw them that way. I never experienced them that way. I just experienced them as being really talented, wonderful gentlemen.
Yeah.
It's strange to say almost, but I think I actually got along better with the black players on our team than the white players because they were more accessible. I was always an emotional kid, and their emotions were so raw and real and accessible that I found I could relate to them better. And they were wonderful at sharing their information. Jim Gilliam in particular, Maury Wills also, along with Wally Moon, were my mentors, my teachers, the ones who schooled me in how to play baseball and how to think properly. Mm-hmm. That was the biggest difference. I didn't know how big leaguers thought. I didn't know how their minds worked. And they would allow me to get into their minds and into their hearts. And that is really how I became a better ball player, is by listening to these guys. Also, I was raised by a Jamaican woman. Yeah, she lived in our home and helped with my mom with the housekeeping and the cooking. Mm. And she was the one who would wake me up for school every morning and cook my breakfast and cook lunch and sass me when I was doing the wrong things. You know, if I wasn't behaving properly, she'd say, "You don't do that." And I was accustomed to being around black people. I didn't think about the skin color. I just thought that they were wonderful people, wonderful athletes, better than whites, frankly, and accessible. That's what I love about black people, is you can touch them emotionally in a heartbeat. Whereas white people, you have to kind of break down their barriers before you really get to know them. Black people, you just know them, bang, just like that. And I think because of that, it helped me to feel more comfortable with them.
Wes, I have read that two of your closest friends on the Dodgers were Maury Wills and Tommy Davis. Is that true?
Definitely. Definitely. Along with I would say Wally Moon and Ron Fairley. Jimmy Lefevre and I were close also. But I think I was very fortunate to play in the 60s. Because I got to get the tail end of the great Dodger run from 1947 to 1966, 47 being when Jackie Robinson started, and what great teams they were, but also because everybody was polished and gentlemanly and well-mannered and open. All of these guys were black or white. They were wonderful at teaching younger players like me how to play the game and accepting me immediately as an equal and not as a rookie. There was no hazing. There was no degrading. Never went through any of that. It was like them trying to build me up, because the most important thing with the Dodgers, as it should be, was just win. Dodgers are all about winning. Ron Fairley used to say, it doesn't just say Dodgers across our chest, Wes. It says winners. That's who we are. And that's what we do. So get out there and help us win ball games. That was the attitude. And it didn't matter if you were black or white. So I was fortunate too that I never had to go through that issue, that entire issue. I kind of lived around it or beyond it or above it. I knew it was there, but it never affected my play and it never affected my relationships with anybody on our ball club.
A lot of the teams did have hazing of the rookies, and maybe sometimes that was not very productive, but interesting that the Dodgers took a different approach. James, one of the great photographs that we've uncovered in putting together this program is this shot of you from 2011. I believe you're playing the Cardinals. I think that might be Albert Pujols at first base. I'm not 100% sure.
Matt Holliday.
Oh, that's Matt Holliday. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not used to seeing players from the back. So Matt Holliday is at first. It's a night game. It's April 15th. It's Jackie Robinson Day in 2011. It's one of several chances you had to wear his number 42. What was going through your mind in those games when you wore that number, a number that a lot of other Dodgers in previous generations never got to wear?
I always thought I could steal home that day. It never happened, but definitely felt faster on those days. I think I even hiked up my pants a few of those Jackie Robinson days, just to feel the energy and have that look, right?
Yeah. You felt a little more inspired?
Yeah,
more inspired on those days?
I think so. And obviously you want to win every game when you're out there, but realistically, it doesn't happen. But I did always feel like that energy was there of like a championship game. It was just felt like, oh, we want to win this game today. We for the fans, for Jackie, right? For everyone. I think we always played. I feel like we pretty much played at home all the time on that day. So it was just that whole atmosphere of let's do it for Jackie. Who's going to get the big hit today, right? Like we always wanted to be the guy, right, in that situation. And I actually remember, I think it was in 2010, I had a walk on Jackie Robinson Day. And then, Josh, the president of the Hall of Fame, he was working with the Dodgers at the time as our PR guy. And he asked for my jersey after the game to send it to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So I know it's tucked away somewhere back in there for sure.
Back here it is. It's definitely part of our collection. It is from 2008. You were playing against the Pirates that day, and it's now part of the permanent collection. It's obviously a great piece for us to have, and we certainly appreciate your generosity. I think one of the really nice bonus features, though, is you autographed it. A lot of our jerseys and artifacts are not autographed, but this one you put your signature on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that was pretty special. Even at the time, I don't think it really hit me. I'm still playing and got more games to go. Not really thinking of, the Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah.
And then, once I got done playing, I something got mentioned to me, and I was like, oh wait, I'm in the Hall of Fame. I was like, if you go, I'm sure in the back room somewhere and dig through, you'll find me somewhere, right? So I always kind of love having that, claim to fame with the association with the Hall of Fame right there. And then, getting the opportunity this year to come out there and see it and play in the game, I think it's going to be pretty special.
Yeah, you will be part of the May 27th Hall of Fame Classic. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Have you been here in the past, James?
No, I have not. The only, the closest I probably have gotten is my mom is from New York, and she used to go to upstate New York a lot for like vacation, and she went to Oswego College up there. So that's the closest I've gotten to Cooperstown.
So when you come up for the Hall of Fame Classic Memorial Day weekend, you're going to ask to see this jersey?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I might wear it in the game. No, I'm just kidding.
I would be fine with that. Our curators might disagree slightly, but it's got to be a great feeling to know that your jersey is a permanent part of the collection here, a permanent part of baseball history. It must be a thrill.
Yeah, and it's cool. Like I always look at things a little differently sometimes, or things pop into my head. Like when I talked about the slide earlier, that kind of just came to me of how I feel like it's bigger than the play. Or like even my situation with the walk, right? Like it showed patience. It showed it was guts. It was 3-2 count off the closer, bases loaded. So it's like, and Jackie in the same way, it's like he had to have patience. He had to have guts, right? And at the end, he won. So it's just kind of like, for me with this jersey, it felt bigger than the walk.
One of the things I notice about this jersey, I mean, it looks pristine. I don't know about the back side of it, but the front side, it looks brand new.
Yeah, maybe I probably didn't get on base any other time that day.
That's a great part of the collection here. One of my favorite photographs of Jackie Robinson is this one from 1962. It was his induction day. Back then, the inductions took place right in front of the museum, right out on Main Street. Mm-hmm. And here we see, of course, two other very important people in Jackie Robinson's life. Branch Rickey, the man who coordinated to bring him to the Dodgers in 1947. And then, of course, Jackie's wife, Rachel, on the right side of the screen. Wes, you did mention that you had a chance, I believe, to interview Rachel Robinson. Was that when you were doing games for the Cincinnati Reds after your playing days?
No, this was later. That was in 73. This was in 1987. when I was doing the radio work. And Rachel was my guest, and it was a call-in show. And I interviewed her for a little bit before we started receiving calls. But I met a lot of really wonderful people in my life. That's one of the benefits of being a professional baseball player at the level that I achieved. But she's right at the top. I'm telling you, you can't meet a finer woman than Rachel Robinson. And she was the secret to Jackie being able to go through what he did. And she's the one who reminded me, which I didn't realize, that Jackie died at age 53. Now think about that, 53. That's young. I mean, I'm 83. So I've outlived Jackie by 30 years. And the reason he died at that age is what he went through as the first black man, and the slings and arrows that he took, the insults, the bad treatment, the lack of understanding that he was subjected to was immense. And he went home to Rachel every night to kind of recover from that. And as you probably know, for the first 3 years, he wasn't allowed to fight back. Branch Rickey told him, "You've got to take it." And then he turned him loose. And that's when Jackie started showing who he really was and speaking out. And we all found out what a great man he was, and what a great, wonderful companion he chose to share his life with. I think that's the biggest tribute you can give to Jackie is this wonderful woman that he married.
Wes, when you talked to Rachel during that interview, did she give you any sense that she knew how his health suffered, not only from the diabetes, but as you say, from the stress, the pressure of being the man to break the color barrier? Was that something she talked about? It may have been too difficult a subject for her to talk about, but did she give you any sense that that was something that she was really aware of?
Absolutely, but it was under the surface. She didn't actually give voice to it, but you could feel it.
Yeah.
And she would talk around it. And when I really realized it was when she told me that he had died at age 53, I didn't realize he was that young. And that just summed it all up for me as to what kind of harassment he took. And of course, we've seen it in the film that was made about his life, and we read about it in the biographies of Jackie, but to get it from his widow really struck home for me. And he was such an incredible athlete too. And that's one of the things that Carl Erskine and Jim Gilliam worshiped him. Jim Gilliam was a rookie with Jackie in 1953 when he first came up. And Jim just could not stop talking about how great a man Jackie was. And he's the one who told me about his athletic skills, that not only did I think he lettered in 4 sports at UCLA: basketball, football, baseball, and track. But the first time he played golf, and Don Newcomb told me this too, another black man, a pitcher with the Dodgers, as well as Jackie, that they brought Jackie out to, I think it was Griffith Park Golf Course here in LA, or someplace where he watched them play golf. And then I guess he practiced a little bit. And the first time he played golf with them, he broke 80. Now, if you play golf, that's the most difficult sport I've ever played in my life. Far more difficult than baseball, football, basketball, track, anything else. And the first time he played golf, he broke 80. The first time. When I heard that, I went, it's got to be the greatest athlete that ever lived. Right up there along with maybe Bo Jackson, somebody like that, or Rayford Johnson. But Jackie was not just a great person. He was a great athlete. He was a great selector of women. He was a great man to go through what he went through, and then to become a leader and a spokesman for Black rights, for Black social standing. Right up there with any of the great Black leaders. So Muhammad Ali included, incidentally, who was one of my all-time favorites, Muhammad Ali. So I have nothing but the greatest respect for him, for Rachel, and actually for the Black human race, because I was so close to all these wonderful ball players. I remember Jim Gilliam telling me one time, I was having trouble hitting Bert Hooton's knuckle curve when he was with the Cubs. And twice with the bases loaded, I popped up or struck out. And I told Jim, who was our coach, I can't hit that doggone pitch. I can't hit that knuckle pitch. knuckleball pitch, and Jim Gilliam so simply said, look for it. And he was right. If you look for it and go up there, then you can hit it. And once you hit it, he won't throw it anymore. So this is the type of relationship I had with the black players on our team. And I would have loved to play with Jackie. That would have been a great experience for me or for anybody, as it was for Jim Gilliam. But at least I got to meet him. I got to talk to Jim Gilliam and the rest of the Dodger players about him. And without exception, every one of these guys, Gil Hodges, Duke Snyder, Jim Gilliam, Carl Erskine, whoever it was, Clem Labine, they raved about Jackie, not only as a person, but as a ball player and as a human being, which is all we can ask for ourselves, for anybody.
James, I tend to agree with Wes that the stress of being that pioneering black player, the racism, the bigotry, that had to have taken a toll. I'm certainly not a medical doctor in any stretch of the imagination, and I'm sure diabetes was a factor as well, but I have to think that stress also shortened his life. For you as a player, while you probably didn't face anything as extreme as Jackie did, I'm sure there were incidents of racism, bigotry that you faced in various eras of your career, as an amateur, as a pro. What about the impact of that kind of stress, to be, having racial epithets thrown at you, people making snide remarks, fans saying things? I would have to think it's got to take a toll on your health, no?
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. Like I said, I never really endured anything like Jackie did. I'll be honest, I feel I only heard maybe like one comment growing up, and it wasn't even that big of a deal at the time. I think it was just a kid being ignorant, not even thinking about the color of my skin and stuff like that. I think there may have been some more underlying comments made that I didn't hear growing up, maybe between parents and stuff like that. I remember like someone stole my dad's tires one night in the middle of the night after a game. Like, we had a game, and, I think he maybe got into it with someone, and I don't know how racial it got, but I know the next day we didn't have any tires on our car.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's just like, those kind of things stick out to you. You can't always prove that it was, racial or whatever like that. But I think sometimes when you're in an argument in a situation where it's a different race or it's a competitive atmosphere, like I said, sometimes people will say those things and not necessarily mean it, but they are just trying to be mean at the time. Right.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it can be racist, but there's like different levels to it. So I just always felt like it wasn't necessarily to the highest degree. Right.
So as a player, you didn't really experience overt bigotry from teammates or managers?
No, I really didn't. I can't really remember. There's little things right here or there that you'll hear, and then you might think about them later. As far as like, I remember, I think one guy would kind of be like, well, why are you guys wearing that? Right. Or maybe somebody comments on a guy's hair, things like that. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's like, full-fledged racism. Like, I'm really not sure. I just think it's more of like, through the course of baseball, there have been adjustments, right, to how people dress in maybe jewelry and the way people are comfortable wearing their hair. Yeah. So it's just more, I think, of a comfort thing, right? It's just different. Like, Black people have different hair than white people. There's different culture. Sometimes people listen to different music. So I think those things just started to slowly get implemented in baseball. And I don't want to necessarily say it's about race, but like you hear now, let the kids have fun, right? So I think that's kind of more, it's just like being yourself, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Wes, I want to ask you one final question on this photograph here. We see Branch Rickey. Branch died not that long after, it was a few years later, as I recall. Did you ever have a chance to meet Branch Rickey?
Never did. But I didn't like him for one reason, because when he went to the Pirates, he drafted Roberto Clemente out of the Dodge organization. And he became my favorite ball player at the time that I was playing. I loved Roberto Clemente. So skilled. And imagine if Roberto had stayed with the Dodgers when they were in Brooklyn, you would have had Duke Snyder in center, Carl Furillo in right, Roberto Clemente in left, three of the greatest throwing arms in the history of baseball on the same team at the same time. And I think it would have been a wonderful thing for the Dodgers and something to see, but they let him go. Pittsburgh got him, and it was because Branch Rickey, when he moved from the Dodgers to the Pirates, remembered what a great ball player Roberto Clemente was. I never met Branch, but I always resented the fact that he stole Roberto Clemente from our organization.
I've heard he could be tough at the negotiating table, but then again, that was a common problem for players prior to the union under Marvin Miller.
Yeah. Now, when I played, I never had an agent. That was really not the time when agents were in vogue. And I had no problem negotiating my own contracts with Buzzy Bavasi and later Al Campanis. So I didn't feel I needed agents. I enjoyed the family feeling that we had, and agents were not a part of that. The Dodgers were privately owned by the O'Malleys, and they were very hands-on, very, very, very friendly, very accessible, very available at all times, and would include us in a lot of social activities. Down in Florida, we always saw them. Walter O'Malley's office and later Peter's was always open to us. I am so blessed that I got to play for the Dodger organization. And of course, I grew up in LA and they came to Los Angeles. So I was playing for my hometown team. Mm. Everything about my career was magical, honestly. I'd never experienced what a lot of the black ball players went through in any way, at any level. So I can't speak to that. All I can tell you is that I heard the stories, I heard them talking about it, and I remember thinking, how could that happen? It didn't happen within the ball club, of course. It never did. I never saw any kind of racial prejudice within the club itself. But to hear the stories of what was happening to them outside of baseball, yeah, horrified me, honestly horrified me. And I admired them, all of them, for being able to leave it outside of the field of baseball and be able to play as well as they did in spite of it.
Another image of Jackie Robinson is his Hall of Fame plaque, which I want to put up there we go. This is the revised plaque that was actually redone at the request of Rachel Robinson back in 2008. His original plaque, at his request apparently, only focused in on his baseball accomplishments. He didn't want mentions of him breaking the color barrier. But years later, 2008, Rachel Robinson felt that with all the time that had passed, it's really important to remind younger generations of what Jackie did. The whole plaque was rewritten. The final sentence was also added, displayed tremendous courage and poise in 1947 when he integrated the modern major leagues in the face of intense adversity. Now, one of the things that Jackie did not live to see was the first Black manager in Major League history. So it's October of 1972. Robinson makes what turns out to be his final public appearance. He would die only 9 days later. It was at the World Series, Riverfront Stadium, A's and Reds, prior to Game 2. He threw out the first pitch, but he also talked about wanting to see a Black face managing a team. I'm curious, Wes, whether you watched that live on television, and if you did, what went through your mind?
No, I didn't. I know Maury Wills later on became a Black manager, and Frank Robinson, of course, I played with him one year. I was thrilled. I don't understand how this ever started, this whole black-white controversy thing. I'm lucky that I lived my life beyond it. I wasn't happy about it. I don't know why it had to be that way. I can't give you all those answers. All I can say is that I'm glad for all the advancements that Black people have made. They're some of my favorite people. They're talking about jazz, Jim, and different choices in music. Ahmad Jamal is one of my favorite pianists. Nat King Cole is my favorite singer. Billy Eckstine was a friend of mine. You know, I've just I've loved Black people ever since the day I was born, frankly. So I'm always glad when they achieve success and when they're held on an equal level with white people, because I don't understand why they wouldn't be to begin with.
Yeah. I guess what I find so remarkable about what he said at the 72 series, he was very ill. He had gone blind from diabetes. He was essentially dying, even though we didn't know that he would pass away in the next 10 days. But he couldn't have been feeling well. He probably sensed the end was near. And yet he's still fighting. He's still pushing. He's still got issues that need to be addressed. To me, that's what's so impressive about that last appearance. He didn't just throw out the first pitch, but he had to get one more message out there, and he did.
Yeah. Jim, do you want to speak to that, James?
Sorry, give me 1 second. It cut on the last. Can you repeat the question? It cut out just a hair.
What I was saying, James, was what amazed me is that when he made his final appearance 9 days before he died, he was blind from diabetes. He was ailing badly, and he couldn't have been feeling well, but he felt it important to get that message in. And it was a little bit of a dig at baseball, saying, we need a Black manager. We need to work on that. Even to the end, he was pushing for more changes. He wasn't satisfied.
Right. Yeah, no, I think he understood the importance of that, right? I mean, obviously the manager is the head of the team, controls the gameplay decisions. So, for him, it's like, I think that's another step moving forward, right? You hear about in today's society a lot on the sports shows and whatnot of, okay, maybe having a minority owner, right? Like with Michael Jordan, with the Hornets. So I think it's just like, he's not asking, for people to give Black people something, but if they're on the, he said, even playing field and they've earned that right, can they at least get the interview, right? Can they at least be considered for these high level positions? And I think at that time, manager was the next step, right? And then, being able to show people and ball players, hey, yeah, when you're done with your career and you're an African-American player, okay, now there should be a shot for you to be a manager if you're qualified, right? Or if management can feel like you're up to the task. So yeah, I think he's just trying to broaden the job range within baseball for more African-Americans.
And there were certainly guys qualified at that time. Of course, Frank Robinson ended up being the first choice 3 years later, 1975. But Roberto Clemente, if he'd lived, possibility he would have been a manager. Maury Wills was frequently mentioned as a candidate and eventually did get the job in Seattle. There was even talk about Satchel Paige at one point, possibly managing the Oakland A's. So there was talk of it. But it did happen 3 years after Jackie passed away. James, I'm curious your thoughts about younger generations of baseball fans who maybe are listening to this program. What should these younger generations, kids and teenagers out there, what's the most important thing for them to take away from the story of Jackie Robinson? What should that legacy be for these younger kids?
Yeah, I think, you take away, it's like this, you have this opportunity, right? Jackie has this opportunity. And going into it, you already know what's going to happen as far as, some fans getting on him or some teammates or, guys on the field or across the diamond. So I think it's almost, to me, it's like you don't give up on your dream, right? And in today's society, it should be easier. It's like, look, we're getting away from where we were years ago. Obviously, we always, we still have work to go, but it's like, don't let other people's opinions, don't let other people's views of you bring you down, right? It would be like, even like a coach, right? Like, let's say you had a coach for whatever reason, and he was racist towards you. Yeah. It's like, look, if this is my dream, if this is really what I want, I'm not going to take that personally, even though it's hard, even though, it's going to be challenging. It's like, you know what? You have your own issues. Like, I'm not going to let that affect what I have to do. And I think I was kind of applied certain little things like that to myself. It was like, I don't care if the media is saying, oh, he can't hit for power right now, or, he's just not making solid contact. So it's just like, I'm not really worried about that, right? I know if I put the work in, I put the time in, I try to learn, get better, I'll take that chance, and hopefully I'll be where I want to be. So I think that's kind of what Jackie symbolizes. It's like, look, doesn't matter. If he can go through what he went through, you have a chance. So I feel like his thing was like, he gave people a shot, and not just in baseball, in everything.
Maybe what you're saying is, don't get angry so much, get motivated.
Yeah, use that as fuel, right? Because you have two options. And I've heard of people when they're younger, right? Like they had a coach that yelled at them and then they kind of quit, right? It's like, I get it, but it's like, maybe they didn't want it as bad or whatnot, but it's like, as a young kid, sometimes you do let those things affect you, right? You're not fully developed yet. You're not sure what's going on. Or you have a parent that's on you all the time. Yeah. It's like, no, like show them, right? Don't, at the end of the day, show that you want it, that's not going to affect you, because, even when you're younger, it's like, yeah, I think it's okay to go through those things, because if you're going to make it to where you want to make it, you're going to go through a lot more, right? There's going to be adversity later down the road. So, use that as motivation, use that as fuel to get you to the next step. And I feel like that shows, how mentally strong you are.
We continue our conversation with James Loney and Wes Parker, former standout first baseman for the Dodgers. We do have a question coming in from the audience. Martin Brody, who's one of our faithful followers. Martin says, this, I guess, probably directed more toward Wes. What kind of relationship did Jackie have with Hank Aaron? Any sense of that, Wes? Do you know if they ever talked? Of course, Hank Aaron went through a lot of the same racism in '74 that Jackie went through in 47, 48, and 49. Any idea on what their relationship might have been?
No, I can tell you I met Hank. I played on the same team with him in a spring training game, and what a sweetheart of a guy he was. Just a wonderful man. I imagine they got along beautifully. I don't know what special comments they might have shared. I think another thing is we may be forgetting Larry Doby, who integrated the American League, and I had the pleasure of meeting him as well. And again, just one of the finest men I've ever met.
When did you meet him?
It sounds like I'm overstating my case here, but these are great people in every case. Great people. Larry Doby was one of the most sensitive, sweetest guys, and I considered him a friend right up until the day he died. And same thing with Hank Aaron, soft-spoken, just a classy individual. So I'm sure that he and Jackie got along beautifully.
Yeah. Wes, when did you meet Larry Doby?
I met him at a dinner or a luncheon at some point. I'm not exactly sure. And he was one of those guys that came over and introduced himself, and I should have been introducing myself to him. He was just that kind of a guy, just beautiful manners. That's always been important to me, is good manners. And he sure had them, as did Jackie, as did almost all the people that I met in baseball.
So glad that he was elected to the Hall of Fame while he was still alive and could appreciate it. Certainly deserving call to Cooperstown. We've spent most of our time talking about Jackie Robinson. It is coming up on April 15th, the annual Jackie Robinson Day celebration. I want to spend our remaining moments maybe talking about some lighter subjects. One of them is the upcoming Hall of Fame Classic, May 27th at historic Doubleday Field. You can see how to get tickets on your screen. And James Loney is going to be participating for the first time, coming up to Cooperstown. I know you're excited about this little trip, James. It's not that long ago that you were playing, so I imagine you're still in good shape and still have pretty decent bat speed.
Yeah, I'm trying to, keep it together here. I'm playing a little tennis and trying to get into this golf thing. And I know Wes alluded to how hard it is, and it's definitely a challenge, but I'm embracing that for sure. And yeah, I've taken some swings every once in a while. I probably need to get out there the week before and dial it in. But that's just the competitive side of me right there.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what to expect right now. So
you'll like the dimensions at Doubleday Field. It's a good park for home runs. Maybe you'll take part in the home run derby before the game. You'll have an option possibly to do that. But I'm sure going through the museum is going to be as big a thrill as being on Doubleday Field.
Yeah, I definitely want to remember to take it all in. I know when I played, sometimes I was just so, ingrained to the game and, not really thinking of all the important milestones that were going on at the time, maybe like Jackie Robinson Day or just being in the playoffs, like, those kind of moments. So yeah, definitely probably take some pictures and really soak it all in, talk to the guys, talk about different stories in our lives. I saw some of the guys with the team that are going, either like played probably with them or played against them. I know I played up against a few of them. So yeah, it'd be great to catch up with them too.
And you will be representing the Dodgers that day. Again, you can see tickets available 407-564-8059, or you can visit our website, baseballhall.org. Wes Parker, this is one of the first baseball cards I ever collected. It's your 1973 card, your last card. Ironically, you didn't play in 73 because you actually retired after the 72 season. You'd had a good season, but you felt it was time to move on. So I always have good memories when I think of this card. I think you're holding on Greg Luzinski at first base, not exactly a speed merchant, but classic day game at Dodger Stadium in LA. And I would be remiss if I let you go without talking about this, Wes. This was one of my great moments growing up because I watched pretty much every episode of the Brady Bunch. And much to my surprise, 1970 episode, you appear toward the end of the episode with Robert Reed, Barry Williams, and the actress Gigi Perot. In the show, for those not aware, your fiance was Greg's math teacher, Linda O'Hara. And Greg is kind of smitten with Linda. That's why he's getting failing grades. And you come in to kind of motivate Greg and say, if you get an A in the course, you're going to get free tickets to Dodger Stadium. I thought you were terrific in this. And it certainly was a harbinger of things to come because you did a lot of other television, Macmillan and Wife, Policewoman, $6 Million Man. But how much fun was it to do this? Was this as much fun as I think it might have been?
It's fun. Oh yeah, acting is fun. As long as you don't take it too seriously. Those that do, it's like getting on a merry-go-round. You never get off. It's very demanding. But I was just playing myself and I didn't have to be polished and professional. So that's what made it fun. And they treated me well. The thing I didn't care about with the acting business is that we had a game that night. I was in town in LA. We had a game and they said they would shoot this scene about 1:30 right after lunch. And we wound up shooting at about 4:30. And that was batting practice time. So I got really upset with him. I said, look, if you don't shoot this thing right now, I'm out of here. I've got batting practice. I've got a game tonight. Don't be holding me up. We do things on time in my world. So the director went, okay. We got to shoot now. Set this thing, get the lighting guy. That was my experience with the film business. I much preferred professional baseball. Yeah. It was more predictable.
Was Walter Alston upset that you arrived a little bit late?
No, by then I was an established player, so he cut me some slack.
Yeah. Did you have much of a chance to talk to some of the actors like Robert Reed, Florence Henderson, Ann B. Davis? Was there any time to interact with them?
No, I never met Florence Henderson. Later on, I met a lot of wonderful people in that business, like Lloyd Bridges, for instance. What a great guy. What a great guy he was. And let's see, a few others that I met along the way who were very kind to me. But it's a strange business. It's not done according to the clock, and you have a lot of dead time. And I was so used to being punctual and living by the clock, but they don't do that. And I found that difficult to adjust to.
Well, you must have met Rock Hudson and Susan St. James on Macmillan and Wife, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I did, right. And he was very nice to me. I met Angie Dickinson. I met Ed Asner, and worked with some others. Jim Backus was a great guy. I worked with him on a show.
Really?
He was so kind, and I remember him from Rebel Without a Cause. He played James Dean's dad. Of course, that was a huge movie at the time. And he was very kind to me. The established stars were very, very nice. The ones who were trying to get up to where they were more insecure and more desperate and not as nice.
Yeah. Well, I actually wrote an article about this episode, and I should send you the article because I wrote in it, and I say this sincerely. I thought you were excellent. I thought you came across really well. You weren't stiff. You were smooth. You were natural. But maybe the best part of it was this blue and white shirt that you wore, which I absolutely love. I would kill to have a shirt like that. You don't still have it, do you?
No, the sweater. It was actually a sweater.
Sweater.
Traveling the way we did, in every town, you'd go to a bookstore, a record store, or go shopping for clothes. And I picked that up somewhere. I don't remember where. Houston used to have terrific clothes. James, I don't know if you ever shopped in Houston, but they really had good stuff. Great threads, as you'd call them. So I might have picked it up there. But the acting business, it's just different. It's not as much of a team game either. In baseball, you live and die with your teammates. That's important in film too, but everybody wants the key light, the spotlight, and wants more on-camera time. So it's not as much of a team event. And I miss that part of it too. I always felt I was a really good team player. I didn't play well for myself, just going for individual records and accomplishments. But you put me as part of a team, and I played twice as good as I normally would.
One other thing I want to mention about Wes, he has a personal collection of baseball books, including over 800 first editions. And you're after my own heart because I love reading. I love reading baseball books, and I have a collection of, I don't know how many, not many first editions, but I think it's a terrific hobby and collection that you have there in terms of reading about the game and the history. And it's obvious that you're passionate about baseball. Final question for James Loney. James, I believe you're doing some work for the Dodgers now, if I'm not mistaken. And if I am mistaken, what are you doing these days?
So let me address the Houston question. I'm from Houston, so I have shopped there quite a few times.
You have any shirts like that or sweaters like that?
I may have one actually.
Yeah.
Not exactly like that, but yeah, I like the collar look right there too. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually working with Spectrum Sportsnet right now, doing the pre and post game shows part-time, and enjoying that. I love breaking down the game, giving my perspective. I go into a show preparing, but then throughout the show, so many things pop in my head. So I definitely enjoy being able to, come from my angle, whether it's, from a defensive perspective, maybe a play, in the infield or base running, just being able to analyze all the different situations and convey it to the fan.
So you think this might be long-term profession for you?
Yeah, I hope so, right? It's like one of those things, I haven't been in it long enough. I got my feet wet with CBS the last 4 years part-time as far as breaking down the Dodgers, leading into a playoff run.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm liking it more and more the more I'm out there, around great people. I've been on with quite a few different guys now. So, and former teammate Jerry Hairston, and a guy I played against in Dontrell Willis. So it's just, great atmosphere when I'm on there with those guys. And, we break down the game, but we also have fun. So it's definitely a great balance.
Well, that's terrific. James Loney and Wes Parker, we really appreciate your time over this past hour, talking about the legacy of the great Jackie Robinson. April 15th, 2023, the celebration of Jackie Robinson's legacy, the first Black player to break through that color barrier in the 20th century. Thank you, gentlemen. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, thanks, Wes. Great seeing you.
Thanks, James.
Yeah.
James Loney, Wes
First,
Parker have been our guests over this past hour. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I did. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.